Hello everyone, welcome to my studio. Today we're gonna take a bit of a detour, and instead of talking about an artist from Alberta, we're gonna take inspiration from an old master. So this is a painting called The White Cat. It was painted by Franz Marc, which is a German painter. He was born in 1880 and passed away in 1916. This is one of his famous paintings. I thought we could play with this today. Hi Tuco, talking about cats. Tuco's gonna help us. Okay. Paper, just this is watercolor paper, but you can use any paper you have at home. I've cut it in 8 by 10 size. And then on my palette, super simple palette today. Titanium white, cadmium yellow, sap green, cadmium red, ultramarine blue, and black, and that should be plenty to do what we need. And I've got, again, my two favorite brushes, 1/2 inch and 3/8 of an inch, but 1/4 of an inch would do too. And I've got a 6B pencil to do the sketch, which we're gonna start with right away. This is probably gonna be the most challenging part of this painting, is to get the sketch right. So we're gonna talk about this a little bit. First thing I'm going to point out is this sort of circle right here. You can see that the back and the tail start a circle, and it occupies a really, really big part of the composition. So we're going to go right ahead and give ourselves that circle. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, because, you know, it's a cat. There's no... Okay, I think I'm just gonna go with that, and then I'm gonna add the head and start shaping the legs. So I'm not pressing very hard on my lines just yet. I just want to make sure I have the information in the right place before I do that. The other thing I'm not doing is I'm not putting any details like ears and eyes, and most of my students are really strongly tempted to do that right off the bat. But before you get to those details, you need to know that you're happy with all your shapes. Now, my cat is certainly not going to be exactly like his cat, and yours at home, same thing. It won't be exactly the same, but just be okay with that. It's okay. I feel like I'm stepping out of my circle a little bit. So that circle was a guideline. Now we're gonna come and expand it wherever we need to. Okay, now it's a good time to come in and add ears and eyes and nose and reinforce the lines that you've already made. When you're happy with all these basic lines, don't be shy and make them darker. He's got a lot of really dark lines. So if you want a color reference, I've included a photo of the painting at the beginning of the video. So you can just go ahead and print it in color. Or you can print it in black and white if you don't have a color printer at home like me. Okay, now we're going to put the pillows. Looks like he's lying on a big red pillow, and his head is on a nice fluffy yellow pillow. Okay, as always, I'm going to start with my dark paintbrush. Oh, no, my big paintbrush. I really like this big size brush. And we're going to start with the pillows. We're going to save the cat for last. So we're going to do everything that's in the background. He's got little areas that are green and pink. So I think I'm going to start with the pinkish areas. They're really faded away in the background. And they're not this reddish green. They're more of a purpley. So I'm adding a little bit. Those two colors are not super compatible, but that's okay. Because this is a very purpley blue, and this is a very yellow red. So normally you wouldn't really mix them together, but I think for what we're doing today, it's fine. It kind of creates a broken sort of pink. It's not as vibrant as it could be, but I actually think it works for this painting. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to do the red pillow to start with. It's a smidge of a broken red, so I'm going to bring a little bit of yellow into it. I'll start with that. So I'm going to do an overall red, and then we're going to come and add all the nice shadows and shading that he gets out of his dark colors. So I'm using the nice straight edge, like this little line here. I'm using it as a way to follow along, or as a tool to follow along the lines that I don't want to lose. So you could go this way around here. It might be easier for you, but try it both ways and see. Like try it like this and try it like this and see which ones gives you more control. Okay, I've got my base color. Now I'm going to bring in these awesome darks. So he's got this red is a bit darker, and then in this area it's quite a bit darker. And then in here it almost turns into black. So I've got a little black on my palette, which I don't normally like to use, but in a case like this where the original artist did use a lot of black, it's totally fine to repeat this process a little bit. I'm actually going to put a little bit of blue in there just to make it a little bit more alive. I want to soften the transition between the two, so I'm creating here an in-between color and just doing a little bit of a stretching of what I've got. You see that I'm not using white to lighten my red. If you use white to lighten your red, you're gonna end up with pink. It's funny, there's no such thing as a lighter version of red. You're either pushing it towards pink or you're pushing it towards orange. There's not really an in-between. So far, I've avoided the pink in this section. Okay, but now I'm gonna go and create a few not super strong highlight, just like a little bit of light. We're gonna do the pink, not the pink, the yellow pillow. It's a bit of a broken yellow. It's got a bit of green and white in it. So this is all yellow in here. And you can see it's got some shadowy area, which we'll create again with the black. But let's just go with our yellow. So you see how careful I am adding the green in. Yellow is a really weak color in the sense that it's very transparent and it gets contaminated really fast by the other colors. I'm going to do the same thing I did for my red. I'm going to give myself an overall base color. I'm going to be careful to preserve my lines, just because I don't want to lose my sketch just yet. Okay, I'm gonna start with my shadows. So for my shadows, I'm gonna use the same color. I'm gonna be just a little bit more aggressive with the green, and I'm gonna bring in some white. Some black and some white. I did bring in some white too. When your brush is not sliding really well, just add a little bit water to your paint. I'm moving back into my lighter color, and I'm going to see if I can pull, if it's not dry. Oh yeah, perfect. Then I can pull that color into my other yellow. And then anywhere where you feel you need to reestablish the dark after, you can. Okay, that's probably good. I'm going to come and I'm going to exaggerate some of the dark. And this is a time I will actually, when I do exaggerate the dark, I'm going to move on to my smaller brush. But before I get onto that, let's do some highlight. You know how much I love highlights and lowlights. They are the key to 3-dimension. Okay, now I'm gonna go and really push those darks. I don't want too much paint on my brush because I want to be able to just pull it a little bit. And you don't want to cover all the work you've done. You just want to reinforce some of these dark lines. I'm just doing one last little tidy up before I move on to the next thing. What I'm trying to do right now is connect all my colors. Wherever I feel a disconnection in my transition, then I'm going to go and reestablish a bit of a connection. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So we're going to move on to the foliage over here, which is just a really small part of what's going on. So we go with our sap green. I'm going to go straight with that to start with. On his painting, that information is not detailed at all. It's really just suggestion that there might be some kind of a shrubbery out there. Now, I know at home your temptation might have been to go start with the cat and do the background after, but you see how we're moving into the shape of our cat here and there? So doing the cat last will allow us to really position him on top of all that. It's a good idea to finish with that. So I'm doing my little stars. You're probably wondering why I'm mixing in orange. It's because I want to go do these little stars here. And again, you saw through this whole process of shaping the stars, I've really used that flat edge of my brush. It's a really good tool to create those lines. And I'm gonna go and add that little bit of, we want to be consistent with the information, so if we have a really strong shadow on either side, then we want to keep that going. And I'm actually gonna kind of match what I see in terms of how far the shadow goes. And then I'm going to do a little blending. Okay. Oh, this is so cute. Okay. I also want to complete these really, really dark areas, so I want to go in here and create these very darks, and then he's got a couple dark information here. I'm not sure what they are, but we're going to put them in, and we're going to go blue with a little bit of black in it. So we don't want to be, especially on these outer ones, this seems to be the color they are. So we're going to make a whitish gray for our cat. He's not pure white, more like a broken white. So I'm going to make myself a little pile. And I'm going to go with a little bit of this. And I actually think I'm going to grab a little bit of red. Be careful with your grays. They're going to dry at least 2 shades darker than what you make them to start with. So whatever you think your color should be, make it 2 tones lighter on your palette. You can see how I'm super careful not to lose my lines just yet, for the same reason as when we started. I don't want to lose my sketch. I'm not ready yet. Okay, I'm going to change brush. I'm going to go with a bit of a smaller one to have a bit more control. You might have had to do that already if you were not feeling in control. Basically now we're just adding all those beautiful dark lines. I don't want to be too pink, so I'm using quite a bit more black than red. Okay, I like that. You can probably see on his work, he seems to be very passionate about contour lines. They're everywhere, even at the top, which, you know, on a realistic painting, you would not put a contour line in these areas. You'd have mostly a highlight. So we're gonna do it exactly as he does. Well, not exactly. Ours will be a bit different. And don't worry too much if you're kind of losing your lines a little bit. It's okay. I'm not going to do too much at once like I did with the background. I'm going to limit myself to very little information. So I'm going to leave it for now. So I'm washing my brush and I'm going to go recover some of this color, and I'm actually going to pull on my color. So because my dark is still wet, it pulls nicely. But if your dark is dry, just do what I just did and bring it back. There's no harm in that. Now, and I'm wiping my brush on my shirt, but you might want to use a rag, especially if you're not wearing paint shirts. So you see what I'm doing. I'm going from one to the other and just giving it a pull and a push. And that one's dry, so we're going to reinstall it and grab your color that go beside it and pull it. He's got a little bit of a blue touch right in here, which is very pleasing. I'm just gonna go do that. when you're painting at home, don't forget to breathe. It's very common for people to hold their breath when they're trying to do something precise. You can slow down the rhythm of your breath, but if you stop breathing, you will end up stressing. It's your body gets into a state of emergency when you hold your breath, and then all of a sudden you can end up actually rushing what you're doing because your body can't wait to take a breath. So breathe all the way along. It you might have to remind yourself when you start painting. It takes a while to get the hang of not holding your breath when you paint. So it might have to be a conscious decision at the beginning. Now I'm going back, and everywhere where I see teeny little dots of white that I don't want, I'm just going and covering them up. I'm not being too fussy about matching exactly his cat. At this point, our cat's got his own life. But always at the end of a painting, always take a few minutes to go around and double check that you're happy with everything. Sometimes you'll look at it 2 days later and you think, oh, I wish I would have fixed that. So it's worth taking this time at the end of your painting to really have a proper look around and make sure that you're fixing any bit of information that you're not liking. Okay, now I'm going to go exaggerate some of the highlights. So I'm going to go actually with just pure white. My brush is dirty, so there will be some gray into the white that I'm putting down just by the simple contamination. Okay, I'm pleased with him. I think we're done. I'm gonna let it dry and take the tape off. He's ready. He's so sweet. I'm gonna move these things out of the way. And we're gonna take the tape off. Now, if you've used a canvas or a wood board, of course you don't have any tape. Unless you've made yourself a border, you could do that with the tape. But, oh, he's so adorable. So this cat was inspired by the work of Franz Marc, German painter, lived only about 36 years from 1880 to 1916. And he's a lovely little cat. I'm sure he had lots of cats in his studio. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I will see you next time in my studio for a different project.